Welcome back to the channel, little flexers. Thank you so much for clicking on today's video. My name is JW Creewall, aka Flex Daddy, and this is the best place to be to learn about the Pokemon TCG and have some fun along the way. Now, I want to do a better job of providing meta coverage and my thoughts on the competitive side of the Pokemon trading card game. That's something that I've been getting away from a little bit recently, and as much fun as I have playing silly decks on the channel, I want to be a bigger presence in your preparation for tournaments, and I want to help you guys out because I'm doing that. I'm behind the scenes grinding and testing and going to tournaments, and I want to be able to share that knowledge with you all as well. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Pittsburgh, which just happened this last weekend. I placed in the top 128. I was 98th or something like that. Made day 2, of course, and then had a pretty average record, finishing 9, 5, and 1 overall, but I opted to play Miraidon. Now, there's a few things I want to cover in this video. 3 things, actually. Why did I choose Miraidon? How my tournament went and how I felt the matchups were. And what is better, Path or no Path in Miraidon? Because I have played both at major tournaments. Played Path version at the World Championships in Yokohama, same list that Andrew Mahone got 21st place with. And then I played no Path version, the one that you see on the screen, in Pittsburgh. So why did I choose Miraidon? Well, coming into Worlds, Miraidon was really great into Giratina. It was really great into Arceus decks. And with Path, you had really solid matchups against anything with abilities. You're thinking things like Gardevoir, you're thinking things like Baxcalibur, really anything that had an ability. It had a really nice matchup spread outside of Mew, I think would be the worst deck to play. So I ended up taking a loss to Mew. I lost to a Ting Lu and just took another unfortunate loss due to some pretty unfortunate draws. And that was how my tournament went in Yokohama. I turned back to Miraidon because I felt like there was a lot of potential there. Obviously, Andrew had gotten 21st. Sajin Park had finished in the top 32 as well. And the testing group was really still on Miraidon, although we were trying to figure out which was better, Path or no Path. And I'll answer that definitively towards the end of this video. But why I ultimately decided to stick with Miraidon is because it's a fantastic deck in time. And its matchup spread is still fine whether or not you play Path or not. I felt like we had a really good grasp. I didn't want to lose to Mew. I felt like that was a fantastic choice heading into Pittsburgh. And so I opted to play the no Path version because it had a little bit better Mew matchup. You obviously have the Drapion. You have a little bit more consistency in the sense that you're playing, I play a Beach Court in here. You play the Lumineon if you need to grab a boss or you need to grab a supporter. So you have a little bit more consistency, and I just valued that a little bit more against Mew than having Path in other matchups. One of the things that I really hate about players when they discuss Miraidon is they always are like, well, that's a brain dead deck and there's no thinking involved. And, just because you go fast, there's some stigma about decks that go really fast and hit with basic attackers. I don't know what it is in the Pokemon trading card game, but people think oh, well, it must not be a good deck because it has all these basic attackers and you're just trying to go attack turn 1. And I just really scratch my head, and it's if we said the same thing about a different strategy, let's say in football with the no huddle offense, oh, the no huddle offense is so bad because you're just trying to go fast and outpace your opponent. It's no, nobody ever says that. Maybe they said that at the beginning of the no huddle offense, but now it's a really accepted part of the game. And I feel similarly about Miraidon in the sense that people say, oh, you're just trying to get a quick Raikou and just overrun your opponent. It's yes, but that's also a viable strategy. I think, especially in America, the reason that we didn't see Miraidon is not because it was a bad deck. I 100% think if we had come to the Path or the no Path version of Miraidon at NAIC, we probably would have, I frankly think dominated in an Arceus infested meta. And even so, the meta is still fairly good for Miraidon. But it's not that it was a bad deck before. It's just that people hadn't been playing it. And you're kind of seeing that now online where you have a lot of players that are looking to play Miraidon that maybe had never touched it before. And you're just seeing lots and lots of Miraidon in these online tournaments. Again, not because it was bad before, but because people like me and Jesse Parker and Andrew and Riley Hulbert and everyone who has been riding Miraidon has really like popularized it and made it like, okay, we've broken the seal for other people to just pick up this deck and enjoy it. So my tournament was, like I said in the beginning, like a little underwhelming. You're always looking for big spikes at these regional tournaments, especially now with the 600 point threshold. You gotta be getting, if I go to 5 regionals and I get points at all 5, but they're all minimum, like, 40 points or 50 points, then I literally need to be perfect at locals to achieve the invite, which is possible, but it's just such a time suck. Like, you'd rather just get these big chunks all at once. So I ended up getting 40 points for my finish, top 128. And I just generally felt good. And it's like a lot of my losses, most of my 5 losses came down to either a coin flip or whiffing an energy at the end of the game, right? And that could have been because I whiffed an energy on the electric generator at the beginning of the game and I didn't have enough with Raichu to take a one-hit knockout at the end, right? It was things like this where it's like, if one little thing goes more my way, then I'm sitting at a much better record. But that's just not what happened. And I ended up with a 9-5-1 record. So tournament, Lugia, I beat 1 and I lost to 1. Overall went 3-2 against the deck. I think it's a very favorable matchup, but that was one where in the couple losses that I had, just kind of awkward starts. And in game 3 of the second series against it, I had a Pikachu flip that did not go my way. So I ended up losing that, and if I flip heads, I win. If I flip tails, I lose, and did not go my way. Giratina Lost Zone Box, I throttled, went 2-0 against that. Tied a Guardy, beat 2 out of 3 mirrors that I played, going 5-2 overall. I feel like mirror is really cool. It's a kind of a fun matchup, honestly. You're both kind of playing chicken. Nobody wants to put their Vs or EXs in the active first, but you also want to take the first knockout. And if you have Lost Vacuum, that's really good. If you have Path in the mirror, that can be good, depending on when you play it. It's just kind of an interesting matchup that I feel like, even though many people are picking up Miraidon for events, if you know how to play the mirror and you're teched for it, you have an advantage. So I was 2-1 against mirror. I beat both Mew that I played, and that's where Drapion comes in so clutch. Such a good card for Mew, obviously, and it means that you just get at some point in the game a free KO. Now, they can always path you out of the Drapion, path Judge or path Iono. You don't really cycle through the deck all that much. It feels a lot like Arceus in that way, where you're able to get an early attack, you're able to play from the board pretty well with Flaaffy, but by and large, you're just hoping that your hands stay big enough and you can draw what you need off of the Seal Stone or the Raikou, or, it just feels like there are points where you can get kind of stuck with your hand. So Drapion can be played around, but against the 2 Mew that I played, they weren't able to pull off the combo, or if they did have Path, it ended up hurting my opponent more than it hurt me. I went 1-2 into Turbo Lost Zone Box. That we knew was going to be a tough matchup. You can win it. I won a set handily in day 2 against a good player. It involves going in early. You have to get the first turn attack with Raikou, and you saw that in the finals with Jesse, where he opted to go second in that matchup, and that's usually the best option because you're trying to get a first turn attack for a knockout, and then get a Bravery Charm on your Raikou, and then use your Switch Carts, and just kind of make it awkward for the opponent. Try to use your Iono, Judge early if you can, and there might be a few things that we could do to improve that matchup, but overall, that's just one of the harder matchups with the deck. We went pretty favorable against it at Worlds, and I actually think Path is a main reason why that was, because if you're able to Path and you're able to Judge, or you're able to Iono, they lose the Greninja, and Greninja over the course of the game can draw 6, 8, 10, 12, you know, I mean, it's essentially another couple of supporters for the Lost Box player. And if you play the Path version, I think you're a little bit more favored, even though it is a tough matchup. And then I also lost to a Charizard. That one was just some unfortunate draws in the first game. And then I arguably made a bit of a misplay in game 3, or excuse me, in game 2. That matchup feels pretty 50-50 because if you get a decent start and you're able to attack with Raikou first turn, then you probably have enough to overcome anything that they throw at you. If you go up by 2 prizes, then you only need to go through 2 Charizards, which is pretty doable if you hit some electric generators and get your Raichus out and stuff like that. But that's just not what happened in my games. So that was kind of overall what I played and how I felt about the matchups that I played. But I think one of the best cards in the list, and I want to talk about this a little bit, is the Flying Pikachu V. And I had a lot of questions about why Flying Pikachu V? Why Flying Pikachu V? Do you think that that's, you know, better than Zeraora or Miraidon EX, the other one that just got released? And I say unequivocally, yes, 100%. Flying Pikachu V is the best value card in the list without a doubt, because it can take you from losing a matchup, like having no chance in the matchup. Like they have game on board. Like they've already checkmated you, to giving you that 50-50 flip. So to go from 0 to increasing your odds by 50%, there's like really no other card that I can think of in any deck in the game that gives you that much of a swing, right? Because we think about the decks that don't play Switch, or they maybe play one Switch. That would be Guardy. That would be Lugia. You know, you're probably beating Lugia anyway, but I digress. That would be Urshifu, right? I mean, these are all decks, and there are many more that don't play a ton of Switch, and that would struggle with a paralyzed flip going their way. And against a lot of these decks too, like Gardevoir is a great example. If you're able to gust up a Gardevoir, and you know they don't play Switch, and you're able to hit it with the Flying Pikachu V, that can give you that one additional turn. You can get a few more energy in play with the energy attached. You can get a few more energy in play with the generator or the Flaaffy, and then you can come up and Raichu for KO if you don't already have enough energy on board. So I like it for that. It actually was very relevant in my day 1 matchup into Gardevoir. I had that exact situation happen, and I flipped tails. And if I flip heads, and I assume he didn't play the Switch or Escape Rope or whatever, but if I flip heads, then I win that game, and I'm able to get enough energy on board for Raichu, and I flip tails and I lost, you know, and that's just how it goes with that card. But I had no other way to win the game in any other situation. If I had Zeraora, if I had, you know, the Miraidon, like there was no other way I could win. I couldn't boss stall something. Like that was the play that I had. And it took my winning percentage from 0 to 50%. So I think Flying Pikachu V, not only is it a great Force Seal Stone user, because you want to attach Bravery Charms to Raikou or Raichu, but it's also just so good for flipping the match if you otherwise couldn't win. So ultimately, what do I think is better? I've played Path and non-Path builds of Miraidon, and I think by a slight margin, I would say the non-Path build is better. And there's a few reasons for this. I think what Path allows you to do is, in the matchups that Path is really good in, it's going to make those matchups better. So Gardevoir is winnable. So, I think it's actually like a slightly favored matchup for non-Path Miraidon, because you try to prize race early with the Raikou, and then you go into your one prize attacker of Zapdos. And if they can't gust around that, then you just have the attacking advantage. You can outpace them. So I think you have a slightly favored matchup into Gardevoir, which I know sounds crazy, but you know, again, if you haven't played the matchup, just try to take what I'm saying and apply it. So Raikou into Zapdos into Raikou again, probably. And then you need to find like gust on a Gardevoir with a Raichu, and then find one more prize. So I mean, that's your route there. And that's what I was doing in my matchups into Gardevoir and how I won my second match. And so I think that the Path gives you better matchups into Gardevoir. It gives you better matchup into Baxcalibur. It gives you a better matchup increased matchup odds into anything that Lugia, for instance, as well. But it also hurts you. You're not getting that extra card off the Raikou. You don't get to play the extra consistency of Lumineon. You sometimes lock yourself out of finding extra attackers if you have a weird bench on the first turn and you got everything out with Miraidon, but now you need a Raichu to close out the game and, oh, you don't have it. Or you really just need boss to win the game, but you didn't play Lumineon in your deck because you're playing Path. So I think there's a little more versatility, and I really value that with decks, especially like a really fast deck like Raikou. It's like, oh, you think you're a one-trick pony by just attacking fast, but you actually have all this depth because you have the Lumineon, you have the Drapion, you have the Zapdos, and you're able to fit in a few other cards that you wouldn't be able to with the Path version, that I feel like gives the deck just enough depth and just enough versatility that I can overcome, or at least have a reasonable way to win any matchup. And I love that about this deck. So I would favor the non-Path for those reasons. And, I really can't fault you for going Path version, but ultimately after playing both, I think heading forward, it's going to be no Path for me. I'm still iterating on the list. I have some ideas for 151. I think Mew makes a lot of sense in this deck. For the draw, of course, because that's one of the big things that you just need in the late game with this deck, is like they Iono you and you just need to draw a few extra cards. So I think Mew could help with that. And also, I think Mew's going to be great for the Lost Box matchup. Try to gust up a Greninja and take 2 prizes, right? It means that they have to bench a Manaphy if they're going to play the Greninja, because that attack is just so punishing for them. So it limits them slightly in that way. There's a few other things that, I want to do with the 151 set in Miraidon, but you'll just have to wait for those, and I'll be sure to be posting videos or making content about that. If you want to hear a little bit more about this deck and about our different philosophies between Path, No Path, and the metagame as a whole, we're recording the Tag Team Pokemon podcast. It's a podcast I do every single week. You can go down in the description below and find the link to the podcast. We're on every major podcasting platform, and that will be with myself and Andrew Mahone this week and Jesse Parker, who got second at the biggest regionals of all time in Pittsburgh with a very similar Miraidon list. So I think you guys will really enjoy that. So with that said, I am going to conclude this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. God bless. If I don't see you soon, I'll see you later. And remember, good luck and also have fun.